If we don't know that about Muhammad, we don't know anything about Muhammad, because that's as good as it gets in Islam. You've got 200 sources all saying, over 200 sources all saying the same thing. And even if you didn't have that, you'd still have the Quran saying it's okay to marry, have sex with, and divorce a girl all before she's ever reached. But yeah, if you follow this issue, you will have Muslims who deny it, right? And they'll especially do that. I mean, you have two kinds of Muslims who will deny it. One, you have Muslims who know it's true, but who will deny it because they don't think you know any better. They think you just heard this from somewhere. You heard this from some person. So, no, of course Muhammad didn't have sex with a 9-year-old girl. That's just a myth spread by Islamophobes. No, it's not. There are I think, a little over 200 sources in the Muslim sources about Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. It's all over their sources.
Dang, 200 though. 200. And y'all acting like that's all right. That's okay. Or you don't know one of the two. I don't know what the two Muslims that he's about to bring up, but that's what I think. It's either you know, like he's saying already, and you just trash because you don't care, or you just don't know. Because again, the moms and everybody else are allowed to lie to you. Their apologists are allowed to lie to you. Which I got another video coming out, by the way, that talks about why that they are allowed to lie. So look out for that one coming. It's funny to me because I got so many Muslims in my comments right now saying, oh man, the Bible lies, all these things lie. And yet they never want to talk about their belief, their religion, their truth, because their truth is nothing but lies. And they want to hide everything. And then they'll say things like, oh man, there's certain people in the Bible, like Mary, for example. Mary was this age. Show me. Show me. So this video right here, by the way, shout out to Dr. David Wood and my brother from Daily Dose of Wisdom. Great channel, by the way. If you're not subscribed to either of them, you should go subscribe to both of them, which both the links will be down below for both of their pages because they do amazing work. Obviously, David Wood and then Daily Dose of Wisdom does a lot of what I do when it comes to reactions, but he just, he actually shuts up more than I do. So, but check that brother out because he reacts to a lot of stuff when it comes to really learned apologists that really discuss the in-depth version, especially with like atheist stuff. Actually, he's the reason why I found Frank Turek, actually. So again, shout out to him. But so all the lies that Islam is about and how they, want to pass the buck on everybody else except their own beliefs. So, but let's continue to get into it. Let's get on with what they're talking about with Dr. David Wood. Come on, brother. Keep teaching us Islam because the Muslims won't.
If put it this way, if we don't know that about Muhammad, we don't know anything about Muhammad, because that's as good as it gets in Islam. You've got 200 sources all saying, over 200 sources all saying the same thing. And even if you didn't have that, you'd still have the Quran saying it's okay to marry, have sex with, and divorce a girl all before she's ever reached puberty. So you will have people who know that it's true, but they'll deny it because they're just basically lying about Muhammad to avoid embarrassment. But you will also have Muslims who they've never read their sources. And so they've heard from someone, oh, Aisha was actually much older. She was probably 18, maybe in that one source that says she was not. Again, it's 200, not one. But they've heard, in other words, they've heard from the liars. And they've absorbed from the liars that maybe, when it says 9, maybe that was 19 and a 1 dropped off. And so they'll actually, I'm dead serious, they actually argue things like that. So the 1 dropped off in hundreds of sources. So you'll have things like that. And then once you are interacting with someone who is going to acknowledge their truth, yes, they'll appeal to moral relativism. They'll say, but it was a different time and a different culture. And there is this problem of what's called presentism, that we're judging the past by the standards of the present, even though 200 years, they'll be judging us by the standards of the future and so on. So you do have that. You have to be careful about applying, rules to people who came a long time ago. And generally we would think, okay, well, if you grew up in an environment where that was normal, then we could give you a little leeway. Even if we really believe that what you're doing was objectively morally wrong, we could say, okay, if you grew up in an environment where that was normal and you didn't know any better, okay, well, we're not going to condemn you in the same way as someone who knew that it was wrong.
Nah, I mean, probably not, but I will. I ain't gonna front. For the, slave owners that owned slaves back in the day, I'm still, forget y'all. Forget y'all. I'm supposed to love y'all. That don't mean I can't say, Notice the finger, though. That wasn't the middle finger. So technically, it's kind of like not cussing, keep myself to the PG-13 standard. But anyway, so with that, no, I don't necessarily, agree with that particular point because, I think the God of the Bible has shown us what morality has been from the beginning of time, and it's not changing. So, um, I think what is set in stone and that we know better against no matter where we're at. Now, whether or not people want to follow through with that, or because people are dying and all that other stuff, whatever. All I know is there's been people in that time frame that didn't apply these rules and that didn't follow through with the nonsense that Muhammad did, even though he's supposed to be the most moral person that they're supposed to follow. So, and there's even Muslims that don't go through with that or even want to go through with that because they also know it's wrong. To his original point, though, that he's talking about how I have actually I've never had a conversation myself. I've seen it on TikTok. I've seen it on other debates where, Muslims who know would just flat out be like, yeah, it is what it is. So what? But I've never seen anybody actually come out and say that, they know that that was the case and they believe it to be true or not, or they believe it to be fine because that's just what it was at the time. Everything that I've ever seen is all the people that don't know or they try to hide it. I've never seen anybody in conversations with me just come out and say like, yo, this is what it is. Everything's just been kind of hit on the rug and or lying, which is mostly what the unlearned Muslims like to do anyway. So with what Dr. David Wood is talking about, I haven't experienced that yet, but also I've still yet to necessarily host and get on my own lives to where, Muslims would come on and talk with me. So when that day comes, I'm sure I'll be able to, have this experience. But until then, it's been duck, dive, and dodgers. So that's what I've had my experience with.
The reason that doesn't really work in Islam is, we've already talked about it, Muhammad is the pattern of conduct. Muhammad's the pattern of conduct. So he is not supposed to be living according to the morality of his time, and that this morality is changing. He's the standard. He's laid down as the standard. So if he had sex with a 9-year-old girl, that is Allah putting his stamp of approval on that, because the guy, he says, if you want to live like someone, live like this guy. That's what he did. So that's a problem with that route. But as you've pointed out, the other main route they go with here, and they can do this in one of two ways. They can say, but in the Bible, or they can say, they point to different people down through history. Like Tristan Tate was recently defending child marriage, and he said, but when Princess Isabella married the King so-and-so, she was only 6 years old. And he gives a Wikipedia link and says, look, see right there, she was 6 years old. He obviously didn't read it, because you go down and it says, because she was only 6, the marriage was never consummated. Canon law, so church law, would not allow sex before a girl reached the age of 12. And so the marriage was never consummated because he died before they ever consummated it. It says it consummated the marriage, and it says because it was a politically arranged marriage, the families arranged it for political purposes. He basically treated her like a daughter, and they never consummated the marriage. And so it's like, that's not a good example for you defending child marriage, when that's not what we're talking about with Muhammad at all. So they will go that route of pointing out, but look at these different people in history who've done this. How can you condemn it? Which is insane from an Islamic perspective. I mean, Islam doesn't believe in drinking alcohol. Imagine they said that and you said, but look at all the people down through history who drank alcohol. They'd think that's irrelevant. So we don't care. We don't care what other people did. We're saying that it's wrong. So that's one problem. But in the Bible, what's amazing, they just flat out lie. I don't mean all the Muslims who are saying it lie. Their leaders, they're da'is. So their da'is are the ones who are inviting people to Islam, but these are their apologists and so on. They just flat out lie. So they'll say things like, and what's crazy is Christians assume that they're telling the truth, and they've done this research. And people will assume. So they will say, but Mary was 12 years old and Joseph was 90. So if you're condemning child marriage, what do you say? What do you say to that? And that's such a ridiculous response. One, it wouldn't matter what Joseph is not a pattern of conduct in Christianity. Joseph, we could find an ancient document right now that says Joseph was an axe murderer. It wouldn't affect Christianity.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. It won't change anything, but that'd be kind of weird. All this time thinking that Joseph was, just this random cool dude. Well, kind of cool. He wanted to leave Mary for a little bit, but outside of that, players mess up. But for him to be an axe murderer, that'd be crazy. Finding that out, that'd be a crazy movie in 2023 coming out.
Not a source of Christian doctrine or practice. So any of these situations is going to be different from the situation with Muhammad. But two, where are you getting the idea that Mary was?
hey, y'all remember, for y'all people my age and young, y'all remember the hash slinging slasher from SpongeBob? If Joseph was the axe slinging slasher, that'd be crazy. That'd be a crazy series on Hulu right there. Joseph, the axe slinging slasher. Forget Abraham Lincoln, the vampire slayer. Joseph, the vampire slayer. Let's go. Let's get this going, y'all. Let's put some money behind this. Let's get this going. We need new movies out here anyway, because everything else is a remake. But you ain't never heard, not nan time, about Joseph and the axe slinging slasher. That's crazy right there, y'all. Okay, my bad. Let's get back. See, remember I said Daily Dose of Wisdom isn't as childish as me, and he doesn't speak as much as me. I need to probably take a page out of his book, because I just be talking for no reason. They ain't got nothing to do with anything. But let's get back into it, y'all. My bad, y'all.
12 from, and that Joseph was 90. You familiar with the chapter? Let me quiz you here. Chapter and verse. What says that Mary was any age, and what says that Joseph was any age?
It's funny because I have also never read that, but you're right that when someone gives you a comment that is specific, you assume it's rooted in something that is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's interesting. When you see someone saying, oh, Mary could have been 12, they're basing that on the fact that rabbis wouldn't allow marriage before the age of 12. And so it's just that's when she could have gotten married according to the law at the time, according to the rabbis of the time. That doesn't, as far as the sources are concerned, she could have been 20, right? All you have to go on from a biblical perspective is that she's called a woman. Blessed are you among women.
Women.
And in the Bible, girls up to the age of 12 were still called little girls. Right? When Jesus says to the girl, little girl, arise, it says she was 12 years old.
Yo, real quick, shout out to my brother Chris Claus, One Way Apologetics. Go follow that brother. He has started to end now his live streams and other videos that he does, and he says some things that are really thought-provoking and really just true. And one of the things that he says is that, our Lord and Savior Jesus saw a 12-year-old as a little girl, but Muhammad saw a 6-year-old as his wife, to show you how corrupt and immoral it is with Islam. That our Lord and Savior, before the time of Muhammad, saw a 12-year-old as what it was, a little girl, what she is, a little girl, but yet Muhammad seen 6-year-old and was like, I got to make her mine. That shows you the mindset, the nonsense that people follow, and they think it's all right. And this ain't even, this is just the disgusting part about Islam. This ain't even really the reason why Islam is false. But this is just another thing that, like, yo, you got to question and think about it. Like, where's the morality in this? Why is it okay for this old man, any man really, to be like, all right, bet, let me marry this person. A lot of people say, oh, well, back in the day, that's what they did. They had marriage contracts. This is for all you Muslim ladies out there. There's actually a Muslim woman who blows up and spams my comments all the time. So this is to you. Would you want your daughter to marry a 50-year-old man while she's 6 and then consummate it? Is that what you want to have done with your daughter? Because if not, you might want to think about it. And then while you're thinking about why Islam is messed up, really look into the other reasons why it's false and all the other reasons why it doesn't make any sense. So with that, my bad. Let's get back into it. Y'all was spitting fire.
So girls up to the age of 12 were called little girls. After, it would be sometime after that when you were considered an adult. But that's all you have to go on. Mary's called a woman in a book where anyone up to 12 is still called little girl. Other than that, you have no ground to go on. So to treat that as a parallel to what we're dealing with in Islam, where we have, again, 200 plus sources saying that Aisha was 9 years old, where in the world are you getting the claim that Mary was 12? Well, here's what's actually disturbing, very disturbing. Their top apologists who deal with this will say, they'll give this quote. They'll say, according to the Catholic Encyclopedia, Mary was 12. According to the Catholic Encyclopedia, Mary was 12. And it's just a rule. This is the only group, and I'm not talking about Muslims in general. You might meet a Muslim, he might be the most honest person in the world. They're da'is, so they're people who do apologetics. I've never seen people more dishonest in my life. And that's why you have to be careful. If I'm talking to a Jew and I ask about Judaism, I'm assuming that the Jew is telling me what he really believes about Judaism. If I'm talking to a Hindu and I'm asking about Hinduism, hey, what's Diwali? Could you explain that to me? I'm not going to, I have to verify everything this person says, because I'm assuming this person's telling the truth. Almost any group out there, if you're asking someone who's remotely knowledgeable, saying, hey, what is this? You assume they're giving you the truth. With these Dawa guys, do not listen to anything they say without saying, I want to read that for myself.
I ain't going to front, y'all. I'm with them. I used to be that way, but now I don't care who it is, even if it's Christians. If they tell me something, I'm not going to believe it, because I'm attempting to get into apologetics and attempting to learn all this. So for me, it's always going to be, you show me, no matter what. You show me. So earlier on, before this, nah, I get what he's talking about. But now, nah, I don't care if you're if you're the Dalai Lama himself. You better show me what it is that you're referring to.
Because what they do, they'll say the Catholic Encyclopedia says Mary was 12, and they'll even circulate a quotation from the Catholic Encyclopedia. If you actually go, and this is why you have to go to the sources, if you actually go to the place where that occurs in the Catholic Encyclopedia, it's on an article on the age of Joseph. Right before it, they cut off the sentences which say there are apocryphal sources which can't be trusted because they're later and because they were written with an agenda. And then right after it, it calls them fantasies that can't be trusted and can't be taken seriously and go and defy all rules of probability. Mm-hmm. So they basically say, hey, there were some later, and the reason they had the later sources was people kept objecting to the Catholic idea that Mary was a perpetual virgin. And so they're bringing up, well, so she had Jesus. Why would she be a virgin forever? Why wouldn't Joseph have sex with her? And then later centuries came up with the idea, because she was really young and Joseph was a 90-year-old man. He was too old. He wasn't interested in sex anymore. And he was just taking care of her as he would take care of a daughter. And that's why they never had sex. So notice the problem. Even if you wanted to go with these sources from centuries later, there was never any sex. There was never any sex. How is this a parallel to Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl? But two, these are later sources. The Catholic Encyclopedia says you can't trust these or build anything off of these. They're just reporting what's in these later sources. They say you can't trust them, but their apologists will say, according to the Catholic Encyclopedia, she was 12. When the Catholic Encyclopedia is saying you can't know how old she was and you can't trust the later sources because they had an agenda. So that's the type of people you're dealing with. The other main one that you'll get is they'll say that Isaac married Rebecca when she was a 3-year-old. And it's the most insane position. All you read about Rebecca is, Abraham sends his servant to find a bride for Isaac, and she comes out carrying the water jar, and then she waters all his camels for him, and takes care of him. And I have a 5-year-old.
What a stud!
It's like, okay, she would have to be like baby She-Hulk to be doing this. Because these camp, you're talking about like hundreds of gallons of water that this little 3-year-old who's having this conversation and who's out in the field working, she's doing all this. You can't get that number from anything in there. There's no indication. But since it doesn't say, they feel like they can say whatever they want, right? Since it doesn't say her age.
Is it like 3 is just as good as 4, or why would they say 3?
There is an insane argument, which they stopped using, so now they just say it. But before they actually had an argument, because at the end of Genesis 22, it says Abraham heard from his relatives. It says Abraham heard from his relatives about all the children who'd been born to his family. And she's on that list. And so what they do is they calculate it from right then. They say, here's how old everyone is right when this happened. So that's when she was born. It's like...
Yo, it was crazy. I seen a TikTok video some months back. Sam Shamoon came on TikTok. He's supposed to be going one-on-one with this really popular Muslim TikToker. And then, much like they like to do, they say, oh yeah, we'll go one-on-one. So he brings Sam up, and then he brings like 5 other people up. And I'm watching this live stream, and this girl, her name's Itchy Scratchy, and she brought up this point because they were talking about Muhammad and how he's not moral. So she brought up this point. And in reading it, there was this word, man, if I get the clip, I'll put the clip on. If I can't, I can't. But basically, she was trying to use that claim like, man, she was, or even the Jewish text was saying that she was 3. Or I think it was Rabbi Rashi said that she was 3. And this one old rabbi was one of the ones that came up with the time of 3 because of what David Wood is talking about, the time frame. And he even said that it wasn't even that was the case. It was just 3 years from the time that he got the revelation. And they kept taking that and saying, well, she's 3, then she's 3, much like David Wood was talking about. So it's crazy how people like to just twist things and just can't take them for what they are.
What are you talking about? He's hearing news from home. He hasn't heard news from home in decades. He hears about all the family members. And so they calculate it right from there. And they say, since that's when he heard about this, that must be when she's been born. When it lists a ton of relatives that he found out were born to his family. And it's like, do you think all this long list of names, all these people were born right that second, right? When like you got an email about it, you're talking about hundreds of miles away. And he finally gets news from home. Her name is on the list of the people who've been born to his family. And they say, so that's when she's born. We'll calculate it from then. And it's like, Really? You think all these people were born right then when he finally hears news from home?
Hmm.
So they will try to argue for it. They don't even usually make that argument anymore because it's so ridiculous. But now
Right.
they just cling to the claim that she was 3 years old, and they'll like, I was just dealing with this early this morning with a Muslim who was saying, she was 3 or 4, and I said, prove your point, chapter and verse, give me the case right now. And the response was, in Genesis 23, it says that Rebecca died when she was 100. I mean, it says that Sarah died when she was 137, and that Rebecca was born at that time. And I go, what? Rebecca's not even mentioned in that chapter. Where are you getting that from? And so that's the case. I actually named this. I called it Islam's 99-1 rule. That it's just built into them as part of dawah, that if you're talking to 100 people, maybe one of them is going to go look up what you say. Mm-hmm. The 99 are not. They're just, oh, wow. Especially if they're on your side, they're going to believe whatever you say. But even people who aren't on your side, if you just say it like you know what you're talking about, they're going to think you know what you're talking about. And if you say, oh, yeah, in Genesis 23, it says this, they'll just, oh, wow, I don't have Genesis 23 memorized, so I'll just assume this person is telling the truth. And so it's like they believe that if you just keep going out and 99% of people are going to believe you, and very small, very tiny group of people are going to check what you say, mm-hmm. and the overwhelming majority who don't check it can always shout down the other person.
Right.
They just believe that you keep winning like that. You can keep spreading nonsense like that. And so that's why they actually seem to think it's okay to spread complete lies. But this happens over and over again. They do this with the Bible, and it's amazing because they claim to respect prophets. They claim to respect Mary. They claim to respect Jesus, and they will not hesitate to make things up. Again, I'm not talking about all Muslims. I'm talking about their leaders of dawah and apologetics. Again, I've never seen anyone who is this quick to lie, especially about people they claim to respect.
So that was David Wood having an interview with Daily Dose of Wisdom, and they did a fantastic job. There's more of the interview. That was just a snippet of the interview, so check it out on Daily Dose of Wisdom's page, YouTube page. Go watch the whole entire thing and learn what you can. This has been your boy, the Scripture Plug Albert. Man, I'll catch y'all next time. Appreciate you guys for watching up in this point. Love y'all. I'm out.